Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Very good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we are going to start with the advantages of field experiments. Now we'll continue with advantages of field experiments. So field experiments are free from three major problems which are suffered by lab experiments. They are demand characteristics, evaluation apprehension, and experimenter effect. Now understand what is demand characteristic. Before you write, first of all, you understand basic human psychology. हाँ, ये लैब एक्सपेरिमेंट का लिमिटेशन है और ये फील्ड एक्सपेरिमेंट का एडवांटेज. ठीक है. क्वेश्चन ये भी आ सकता है कि डिस्कस द लिमिटेशन ऑफ लैब एक्सपेरिमेंट, तो भी ये लिखेंगे. और अगर कहा जाए कि व्हाट आर द एडवांटेजेस ऑफ फील्ड एक्सपेरिमेंट, तो आप ये लिख सकते हैं कि दीज आर फ्री फ्रॉम दीज थ्री लिमिटेशंस. ठीक है. इसलिए मैंने इसको ऐसे करके दिया आपको, ताकि दोनों तरह के क्वेश्चंस आप हैंडल कर सकें. नाउ suppose I am a reputed psychologist and I hire you as my subject. So when a subject is hired, he or she is given a payment. So somewhere down the line, as a subject, you feel very important person, that out of so many people in the population, I was chosen as a sample and I am here to fulfill a very huge responsibility. So research is being going on and hypothesis has to be validated, and I am being the chosen person as the person who will validate the hypothesis. So I will make a history if this hypothesis turns out to be a theory or a law. तो मैं another HM बन जाऊंगा. मेरी बात समझ रहे हैं? So subject begins to make guess about what is the purpose of hypothesis. They start guessing mentally. तो वो कुछ ना कुछ hypothesis के बारे में guess कर लेते हैं. Okay, this is the hypothesis which is waiting for being proven. And they work out in a manner, they behave in a manner so as to prove the hypothesis. So this behavior is not natural. They're actually trying to give support to the hypothesis, as if they think that this is the demand that I am supposed to fulfill. So the behavior of the subject will not be natural. He will be behaving in a way as if he is working out the hypothesis to prove it correct, because he feels very important. This is demand characteristics. Okay. So now you can write about demand characteristics. Demand characteristics is defined as demand characteristic is defined as the guessing behavior. Demand characteristics is defined as the guessing behavior that the subject makes about the experimental hypothesis. Demand characteristics is defined as the guessing behavior which the subjects make about the experimental hypothesis. After making guesses about the hypothesis, the subjects behave in a manner. After making guesses about the hypothesis, the subjects behave in a manner as if they are working out the hypothesis. As if they are working out the hypothesis. The subjects assume the responsibility. The subjects assume the responsibility to fulfill the demand of the hypothesis. The subjects assume the responsibility to fulfill the demand of the hypothesis. And this makes their behavior artificial. Which makes the subject's behavior artificial. ठीक है? Now, Orne in the year 1962 asked the subjects. Orne in the year 1962 asked the subjects to note down the telephone numbers from a directory on a piece of paper. Orne in the year 1962 asked the subjects to note down the telephone numbers from a directory in a piece of paper and then tear it apart. And then tear it apart and continue doing the exercise for several hours. And continue doing the exercise for several hours. So keep noting down the numbers on a piece of paper and tear the paper. Again, take a fresh paper, note the numbers, tear them apart, several hours. Orne actually wanted to see that after which point the subjects get boredom and they withdraw. Okay, this was the hypothesis कि subject किस हद तक एक boring task कर सकता है, ये देखना था इनको. The subjects went on doing the task sincerely for hours. The subjects went on doing the task sincerely for hours because they assumed that it is test of their patience. Because they assumed it was test of their patience. Okay? Therefore, Orne defined demand characteristics as totality of cues. Orne defines demand characteristics as totality of cues which conveys about the experimental hypothesis to the subject. Which conveys about the experimental hypothesis to the subject. Totality of cues which convey about the experimental hypothesis to the subjects. Now, what are these cues? What are the totality of cues? To know this, we need to know the sources of demand characteristics. The sources of DC. First of all is campus gossip. Campus gossip. The campus gossip and rumors inside the campus or the lab the campus gossip or gossip and rumors which take place inside the lab or the campus between the subjects make them guess about the hypothesis, make them guess about the hypothesis. So several subjects are there in a common area. They talk with each other, making guesses कि किस लिए बुलाया होगा हमें, and this guessing lead to formulation of an hypothesis. Unanimously they can arrive at a hypothesis. अच्छा लगता है इसलिए experiment हो रहा है. This is the purpose of the hypothesis. So this is one of the cue that the subject may get about the experimental hypothesis. Second, explicit or implicit communication by the staff. So apart from the researcher, there are several staff. Now what this staff is communicating? Like during my psychology practicals, the staff who used to carry the apparatus and the equipments and the material, they used to give hint कि करना क्या है. पहले ही बोल देते थे इसमें 40 मिनट से ज्यादा लगाएगा फेल हो जाएगा. ठीक है, वो हिंट दे देता था कि 40 मिनट के अंदर करना है, जबकि एग्जामिनर कुछ नहीं करता था. एग्जामिनर को देखना था कि 40 मिनट के अंदर कर पाता है कि नहीं, लेकिन वो प्यून बता देता था. ठीक है, तो हमें आसानी हो जाती थी. बदले में प्यून को 10 रुपए 20 रुपए, आर यू गेटिंग इट, चाय पानी के लिए खर्चा पानी, नींबू पानी, काला पानी, जो भी देना है. The explicit or implicit communication by the staff. Implicit communication is non-verbal communication, is facial expressions. ठीक है, or the equipments present in the room. The equipments present in the room can also convey about the experimental hypothesis. ठीक है. Therefore, what are the methods that can reduce demand characteristics? Methods to reduce demand characteristics. Number one, begin by asking the subject to make guess about the experimental hypothesis, begin by asking the subject to make guess about the experimental hypothesis. Let us see what the person is bearing in mind. उसके दिमाग में क्या है. ठीक है, and then eliminate all the cues, and then eliminate all the cues that has led the subject to make such guess, and then eliminate all the cues that has led the subject to make such guess, ठीक है, for the next group of subjects, and eliminate all the cues that has led the subjects to make such a guess, and eliminate those cues for the next group of subjects, ताकि next group guessing ना कर पाए. ठीक है, this is one way. Second one is single blind method. Single blind method. single blind method. In this method, the subjects are kept totally unknown about the purpose of the research. In this method, the subjects are kept totally unknown about the purpose of the research. They are informed that they are going to participate in a playful activity. They are informed that they are going to participate in a playful activity. So they never come to know that they are the subject of a hypothesis or a research. Number third, double blind method. So single blind because subjects are unknown, but the researcher knows. So one person is blind, that is the subject. Now double blind method. ये और खतरनाक है. In double blind method, neither the subject nor the experimenter is aware about the hypothesis being verified. In double blind method, neither the subjects nor the experimenter is aware about the hypothesis being verified or objective of the research. Hypothesis being verified or objective of the research. The researcher hires professional experimenters. The researcher hires professional experimenters who are given a task to perform, without disclosing about the purpose of the research. Without disclosing about the purpose of the research. ठीक है? जैसे मैं रिसर्चर हूं, मैं किसी अच्छे साइकोलॉजिस्ट को हायर करूंगा और उनसे कहूंगा कि ये काम करके आओ, और मैं कुछ भी नहीं बताऊंगा कि किस लिए किया जा रहा है, व्हाट इज द हाइपोथेसिस. तो हियर नीदर द सब्जेक्ट nor the experimenter. Experimenter also does not know what is the purpose of the research or what is the hypothesis. So even he cannot give any non-verbal communication to the subject. तो दोनों ही blind है. So it is expected that the behaviors so committed in artificial setting will not be so artificial, it will be natural. And technique to reduce demand characteristic. So that was demand characteristic DC. तो क्वेश्चन आपको सेपरेट क्वेश्चन मिलेगा कि व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय डिमांड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक, सजेस्ट हाउ टू कंट्रोल देम, और व्हाट डू यू अंडरस्टैंड बाय सिंगल ब्लाइंड डबल ब्लाइंड मेथड्स, हाउ डू दे प्रिवेंट डिमांड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स. इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस आते हैं शॉर्ट नोट्स में. इससे भी खतरनाक होता है, इवन मोर डेंजरस इज इवैल्यूएशन एप्रीहेंशन. Evaluation apprehension is defined as an anxiety toned concern It is defined as an anxiety-toned concern within the subject that they should win a favorable impression. They should win a favorable impression for themselves, or at least or at least leave no ground for negative evaluation. Or at least leave no ground for negative evaluation. An anxiety-toned concern within the subjects that I should win a favorable impression for myself. Or at least I should not give any reason for negative evaluation. मतलब बहुत ज्यादा कॉन्शियस हो जाना कि मैं सब्जेक्ट हूं, मुझे देखा जा रहा है, आई एम द एक्टर, आई शुड गिव माई बेस्ट परफॉर्मेंस, at least I should not give a bad performance. Now, this apprehension that is occupying the mind will make them behave extra honestly and extra effortfully, which is departure from natural. Very similar to demand characteristic, but in demand characteristic, they were assuming the responsibility. Here, they are trying to win a favorable impression. मतलब ये और भी खतरनाक है. For example, when the subject were asked inside the lab, is crow a bird? When the subject was asked by the researcher in the lab, is crow a bird? The subject very sincerely and spontaneously replied yes. Now, when the subject is sitting in a bar enjoying his drink, and say a stranger comes and asks him, is crow a bird? What is going to be the reply of the subject? चल भाग यहां से, है ना? तो लैब के अंदर आप इतना सिंसियर क्यों हो रहे हैं? अगर कोई ऐसा बेहुदा सवाल आपसे पूछे, इज क्रो अ बर्ड, तो नेचुरली आपका नेचुरल रिएक्शन क्या होगा? पागल है क्या? ठीक है, लेकिन आप लैब में क्या बोल रहे हैं? यस. व्हाई? बिकॉज यू वांट टू प्रूव दैट यू नो दैट यस, क्रो इज अ बर्ड. यू वांट टू विन अ फेवरेबल इंप्रेशन, isn't it? So the behavior is not natural. So according to Aronson et al, according to Aronson et al, evaluation apprehension is more powerful than demand characteristics. ठीक है? So how evaluation apprehension is stronger than demand characteristic? There can be a separate question. Which of the two is more powerful and how? तो ये experiment काम आएगा. How demand characteristic, evaluation apprehension is more powerful than DC. Aronson et al gave the subjects the task of noting down the telephone numbers from a directory in the first session. Aronson et al gave the subjects the task of copying or noting down the numbers from telephone directory in the first session. In the second session, the subjects were given the same task to repeat. In the second session, the subjects were given the same task to repeat, but with the instruction that do it carefully, but with the instruction, do it carefully and never mind if you are slow. Do it carefully and never mind if you are slow. So what was the demand created in the second session? Accuracy. Accuracy is the demand. भले तुम धीरे धीरे करो लेकिन गलत नहीं होना चाहिए, ये डिमांड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक क्रिएट किया गया. However, it was found in the second session the subjects did the task faster. However, it was found that the subjects did the task faster. Due to evaluation apprehension. Due to evaluation apprehension. They wanted to prove they can be still accurate being fast. They can be still accurate being fast. ठीक है, तो इवैल्यूएशन एप्रीहेंशन इज मोर पावरफुल देन डिमांड कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स. ठीक है. थर्ड वन इज एक्सपेरिमेंटल इफेक्ट. Experimental effect is also known as implacability of the experimenter. It is also known as implacability of the experimenter. Now see, under usual circumstances, it is expected. अभी लिखिए मत, मैं बता रहा हूं. Under usual circumstances, it is expected that independent variable will affect the dependent variable, but independent variable will not be affected by the dependent variable. But in real life settings, this does not happen. So, ideal condition is the teacher will teach the students and the teacher will not be affected by the behavior of the student. But actually what happens, the teacher teaches the student and the student's response and feedback also affects the teaching of the teacher. So here, dependent variable also affects the independent variable. For example, the speed with which you are nodding your head, the frequency with which you are looking at the board, the silence that you are maintaining in the class, you are not talking to each other. All these things give me a propulsion to deliver the lecture more and more. अगर मैं देखूं कि बच्चे रिस्पॉन्ड ही नहीं कर रहे हैं, आपस में बातचीत कर रहे हैं, कोई सर ही नहीं हिला रहा है, सब ब्लैंक लुक दे रहा है, तो मैं एक ही चीज को बार बार बताता रहूंगा, thinking that you are not getting it. So my behavior, my teaching is also being affected by your feedback and responses. So it is both way. So as long as the independent variable is present in the situation, he will do something that will communicate something to the subjects and the subjects will act accordingly. तो मैं आपको एग्जांपल दूंगा. What happened? There was a clever hands horse. मैंने बताया था पहले भी आपको. एक घोड़ा था जिसका नाम था क्लेवर हैंड्स. इसके मालिक ने बहुत पैसे कमाए. दिस हॉर्स वाज क्लेम टू नो मैथमेटिक्स. ठीक है. सो दिस हॉर्स was taken in a stadium full of audience and there used to be a board and you give any kind of arithmetic puzzle to this horse, the horse will complete the puzzle, solve the puzzle. For example, if you give him the task of 7 plus 4 is equal to what, the horse would tap its feet. The horse would tap its feet 11 times. ठीक है? And stop. 7 plus 4 is equal to 11. Whatever be the puzzle you give, the horse will do it. And this made the owner of the horse very rich. Now, one psychologist whose name was Angust. P silent है. So one psychologist whose name was Angust, he took the challenge, and what he did, he blindfolded Clever Hands. Clever Hands के आंखों में पट्टी लगा दिया. You know, after giving him the puzzle, after showing him the puzzle, Clever Hands was blindfolded. 7 plus 4 is equal to what? So Clever Hands started tapping its feet, and it went on tapping the feet indefinitely beyond 11. तो होता क्या था, जैसे ही गिनती पूरी हो जाती थी, मालिक के चेहरे पे एक स्माइल आ जाता था. There was a sign of relief on the facial expression of the owner, and that gave the hint to the horse that now I should stop. Now when the horse was blindfolded, he could not see the owner, and hence went on tapping the feet. बेचारा हैंड्स का मालिक भिखारी बन गया. अच्छा खासा पैसा कमा रहा था. ठीक. Anyways, so you can write. It is expected that in an experiment, IV should influence the DV, but it should not be influenced by the DV. In an experiment, it is expected that IV should influence the DV, but it should not get influenced by the DV. But in real life, both IV and DV affect each other. But in real life, both IV and DV affect each other. Therefore, mere presence of the experimenter may influence the result of the experiment. Mere presence of the experimenter may influence the result of the experiment. जैसे मान लो मैंने सवाल पूछा क्लास में. I asked a question to this class, and one person replied, the second person replied, and all are giving wrong replies. Now one person gives a correct reply. Now that correct reply brings a charm on my face, and I question him, are you sure? He has noticed the charm, the micro expression. He said, yes sir, I am damn sure, although he was not sure. ठीक है. क्यों? क्योंकि मेरे चेहरे पे ऐसा भाव आ गया. उसने पढ़ लिया. वो तो अंधेरे में ढेला मार रहा था. ठीक है. He was throwing stone in the darkness. उसका लग गया निशाने पे. अब वो देख लिया मेरे चेहरे पे, तो मेरा प्रेजेंस ही उसको बहुत कुछ कम्युनिकेट कर गया. ठीक है. So mere presence of the experimenter can affect the result of the experiment. So you can cite the example of Clever Hands and Angust. Now, regarding experimental effect, experimenter's effect, there was a research done by Rosenthal et al. Rosenthal et al. ये क्लेवर हैंड्स वाला लिखवा दूं क्या मैं? लिख लेंगे आप? ठीक है. Rosenthal et al. Rosenthal et al. Gave the subjects two group of worms. So two group of worms were given to the subjects in two beakers. He told the subjects that one of the group is group of active worms and the other group is group of lazy worms. So the subjects were told that one of the groups are active while the other is lazy. The subjects were asked to count the movements estimate the movements made by the worms. The subjects were asked to estimate the movements made by the worms. The subjects reported greater movement for the active group. But in reality, both the groups were equally active. But in reality, both the groups were equally active. ठीक है, तो एक्सपेरिमेंटर ने दिमाग में एक एक्सपेक्टेशन डाल दिया कि ये एक्टिव ग्रुप है, ये लेजी ग्रुप है, तो इनको ज्यादा मूवमेंट एक्टिव में दिखा, जबकि दोनों ही इक्वली मोबाइल थे. ठीक है, देयरफॉर एक्सपेरिमेंटर इफेक्ट इंक्लूड्स ऑल द बिहेवियर्स. Therefore, experimenter's effect includes all the behaviors like instructions. Therefore, experimental effect includes all the behaviors like instructions, body language, and expectation of the experimenter, which may convey something to the subjects. Which may convey something to the subjects. आज पार्था दिख नहीं रहा है. Okay, now I want you to have a look at the past question from research methodology and find how many questions have been asked from demand characteristics, experimental effect, and evaluation apprehension. Just tick mark them. देखो एक बार कितना क्वेश्चन पूछा है. Did you see the questions? हाँ बनेंगे? ठीक है. Now limitation of field हाँ yes Neha.
So there was a question related to ex post facto research design. Is it
That is
same
what we
as?
are going to. That is we are going to begin quasi experimental method.
Okay, sir.
ठीक है. So limitation of field experiments. First, lesser control as compared to lab experiment. Lesser control as compared to lab experiment. Second, lack of internal validity. Because you have lesser control over the external factors, lack of internal validity. ठीक है. Lack of internal validity. For example, Shortland and straw experiment may you can always question that how can you say that people did not perceive the fight to be unreal? People might have perceived the fight to be unreal and that is why they did not intervene. ठीक है. This can be questioned. Okay. Second, reliability of field experiment. Reliability of field experiment in absence of control may be compromised. Reliability of field experiment in absence of control may be compromised. Number third, it may be expensive. It may be expensive. Now moving on to quasi-experimental or ex post facto method or design. Quasi-experimental methods are also called ex post facto method or design. In some of the research, experimentation may not be possible. In some of the research, experimentation may not be possible due to various reasons. In some of the research, experimentation may not be possible due to various reasons. In such occasions, quasi-experimental methods are employed. In some situations, the subjects may not be available for random assignment. In some situations, the subjects may not be available for random assignment to either control or experimental group. In some situations, the subjects may not be available for random assignment to control or experimental group. Therefore, in quasi experimental method, we study the pre-existing groups. Therefore, in quasi experimental methods, we study the pre-existing groups. Now, this quasi-experimental method or ex post facto method is employed under three conditions. Quasi-experimental method or ex post facto methods are employed under three conditions. Condition number one, when the subjects are not available for random assignment. When the subjects are not available for random assignment. For example, if we want to study the effect on children's academic performance on parental divorce. Sorry. If you want to study the effect of parental divorce on children's academic performance, you cannot assign randomly children to non-divorced parent and divorced parent. आप ये तो नहीं कर सकते. आप देखना चाहते हैं कि माँ बाप के तलाक होने की वजह से बच्चे के पढ़ाई लिखाई में क्या असर पड़ता है. आप कैसे देखेंगे? क्या आप एक्सपेरिमेंट कर सकते हैं इस पर? एक्सपेरिमेंटल मेथड विल रिक्वायर टू क्रिएट टू ग्रुप्स, कंट्रोल ग्रुप, एक्सपेरिमेंटल ग्रुप. कंट्रोल ग्रुप विल बी नॉन डिवोर्स पेरेंट, experimental group will be divorced parent. So can you really get the couples divorced just for the sake of experiment? No. And can you assign children? You cannot assign children. Okay. Neither you can assign this kind of parents, divorce or non-divorce parent, into control group or experimental group. तो यहां पे आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा? You have to study the pre-existing group. You have to collect the data of children's performance from divorced parents and data of children's performance from non-divorced parent, and you have to compare the data कि किनके बच्चे अच्छा परफॉर्म कर रहे हैं, and then you can establish a correlation. ठीक है? For example, the impact of parental divorce on academic performance of the children. Or you can say effect of alcoholism in family and academic performance of children. Effect of alcoholism in family and academic performance of children. ठीक है? Second condition, when it is not possible to manipulate the IV. When it is not possible to manipulate the IV, when you cannot give any treatment effect to IV, when you cannot give any treatment to IV, for example, natural calamity and PTSD. Suppose the hypothesis is tsunami or volcano can lead to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, can the researcher create tsunami or volcano or earthquake? No, he cannot manipulate the IV. Okay? So, natural calamities cannot be created, or large social or political changes, or the impact of large social and political changes, or effect of large social and political changes on behavior of the subjects. ठीक है? And the third condition is when experimentation is constrained by ethical reasons. When experimentation is constrained by ethical reasons. For example, if you want to see what is the impact on the psychology of victims who have survived a terror attack, you cannot artificially stage manage a terror attack. You know, what is the impact on the hostages who survive a hostage crisis? अब क्या ये एक्सपेरिमेंट करने के लिए आप लोगों को पहले किडनैप करेंगे, एब्डक्ट करेंगे? ये तो आप कर नहीं सकते हैं. You can't take the law in your hand. So when the experimentation is constrained by ethical reason, so these are the three conditions in which we cannot carry out experimental method. Then we resort to quasi-experimental method, which is also known as ex post facto, because you are studying the pre-existing groups. The fact has already occurred. You are not responsible for it. You are just comparing them. Okay? That is why ex post facto design. Now, the types of quasi-experimental or ex post facto methods. Types. Natural experiment. The researcher makes use of certain naturally occurring events. The researcher makes use of certain naturally occurring events for study. For example, Williams studied the impact of television on aggression in children. Impact of TV on aggression in children. Impact of television on aggression of children by studying 3 towns of Canada. By studying 3 towns of Canada whose names are disguised as Notel, Unitel and Multitel. हम नाम नहीं बता सकते सिटी का क्योंकि वहां के लोगों को कष्ट हो सकता है इस बात से, तो हम लोग साइकोलॉजी में जो भी स्टडी करते हैं उसका नाम डिस्गाइज कर दिया करते हैं. Notel was the town where there was no television channels. Northern Canada, where the temperatures are extremely cold and which are lived by primitive Eskimos. There was no television channel. Like Alberta province, Saskatchewan province, उसके जो northern parts हैं. So Notel is a town from Canada where no television channel existed. Unitel was a town where there was a single television channel. And Multitel was an advanced town with multiple channels. Williams found within 2 years, Williams found that within 2 years, since a channel was introduced in Notel, within 2 years, since a channel was introduced in Notel, aggression in the children of Notel increased. Aggression in children of Notel increased. However, there was no such increase in aggressive behavior. However, there was no such increase in aggressive behavior amongst children of Unitel and Multitel who were already watching TV. Okay. However, there was no such increase in aggressive behavior amongst children of Unitel and Multitel. लेकिन नोटेल जहां कोई टीवी नहीं था, जैसे टीवी आया एग्रेसिव बिहेवियर में बढ़ोतरी हो गई. ठीक है. नाउ एडवांटेजेस ऑफ नेचुरल एक्सपेरिमेंट. एडवांटेजेस. नंबर 1, the subjects are unaware that they are being observed. The subjects are unaware that they are being observed. And hence they behave naturally. So there is no artificiality effect. Okay? Advantage number 2, it can be used when it is not possible to manipulate the IV. It can be used when it is not possible to manipulate the IV. Adams and Adams. For example, Adams and Adams found that people visiting mental hospital increased. Adams and Adams found that people visiting mental hospital increased immediately after the spread of the rumor. After the spread of the rumor that St. Etna volcano, St. Etna is a volcanic mountain in Mediterranean. After the rumor that St. Etna volcano is going to explode. तो सेंट एटना वोल्केनो इन ग्रीस इज गोइंग टू एक्सप्लोड. जैसे ही ये रूमर फैला शहर में, लोगों को मेंटल हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम शुरू हो गया एंड दे स्टार्टेड विजिटिंग द मेंटल हॉस्पिटल्स. सो स्ट्रेस एंड एंजाइटी, फियर. So correction between natural calamity and fear, apprehensions. Now, limitation of natural experiments. What are the limitations of natural experiment? Let us see. Subjects cannot be randomly assigned to either control or experimental group. ठीक है. Limitation number 2, the issue of sensitivity. The issue of sensitivity. For example, it may be quite resentful for the victim to be interviewed after the tragedy. For example, the people who were rescued from Taj Hotel during Mumbai terror attack, they were being interviewed by media. आपका परिवार अंदर फंसा हुआ है, आपको कैसा लग रहा है? आपके बच्चे मर गए, आपको कैसा लग रहा है? अब ये बताओ, ये मारने का मन नहीं करेगा उस आदमी को जो ऐसा पूछेगा? ठीक है, लोग पूछते भी है बेकार के सवाल। मान लो किसी का अर्थ ही जा रहा है, कोई मर गया है, हाँ, आके पूछेंगे मर गए क्या? नहीं, इनको लेटने का शौक है, हमें घुमाने का शौक है। ये तो फिर भी ठीक है। मान लो कोई सोया हुआ है, उसको जगा दिया, सो रहे थे क्या? कॉमन। मेरा एक दोस्त है, मैं नाम नहीं लूंगा, आपका टीचर भी है, वो फोन करेंगे और जब तक मैं उठा वो करते रहेंगे। अब मैं सो रहा हूं, मैंने नहीं उठाया, मिस कर गया, पहला रिंग चला गया, दूसरा तीसरा रिंग में मान लो मैंने उठा लिया, अरे सर सो रहे थे, अरे सो जी सो जी। Second, there is an ethical constraint of voluntary informed consent. Voluntary informed consent. According to law, you cannot record anybody's action or behavior without giving them a prior notice, without obtaining their voluntary consent. So here we are making observation without letting the subject know that they are being observed. So the ethical issue of voluntary informed consent is always there. So this is natural experiment. Now coming to correlational studies. The second type of quasi-experimental method is correlational study. One is natural experiment, another is correlational studies. Okay. What is correlational study? It involves finding the associations between two variables. Finding the association between two variables. Correlational studies are inferior as compared to experimental studies. Correlational studies are inferior as compared to experimental studies in a sense that they cannot establish cause and effect relationships. In a sense that they cannot establish the cause and effect relationship between IV and DV. In experimental studies, you can establish that changes in taking place in DV are caused by changes taking place in IV. So you can establish a cause and effect relation in experimental method. In correlational method, you cannot establish that what is causing what. You can at max establish association between two variables. In correlational study, we can only establish association between two variables. we can establish association between two variables. For example, correlational studies reveal that children who spend more time watching TV Correlational studies reveal that children who spend more time watching TV are the same who commit more aggression. Can you conclude that children, because they watch more TV, they commit more aggression? It can also be said that children who commit more aggression watch more TV. है कि नहीं? आप कैसे बोल सकते हैं कि TV watching is causing aggression? It may be possible that aggressive children spend more time watching TV. So what is causing what, we cannot say, but these both are associated. And it is also possible that both may be caused by a third factor, say frustration. So children who are frustrated, they watch more TV or commit more aggression. So what is causing what cannot be established. So you can write here, we cannot conclude that which variable affects which variable affects the other. It may be both ways. Or both the factors may be affected by a third factor. Or both the variables may be affected by a third factor. For example, sales of diamond and sales of BMW car in UK are correlated. Sales of diamonds and sales of BMW car in UK are correlated. देखा गया है कि जब डायमंड का सेल बढ़ता है यूके में, BMW का भी सेल बढ़ता है यूके में. Can you say that diamond has something to do with BMW or BMW has something to do with diamond? Maybe both has to do something with economic boom. है ना? When there is boom in the economy, people invest or people spend more in luxurious items, which can be diamond or car. Yeah, price being less, demand being more. Correlation. Smoking may cause cancer. Is there a guarantee that smoking will cause cancer? No. But if you visit a cancer ward, you will find most of them have smoking history. So you can say there exists a correlation between smoking and cancer. But you cannot prove it through cause and effect relationship. Yeah, all smokers don't have cancer and all cancer patients are not smokers. क्या डाउट क्या हो रहा है? नेहा, ये लोग मेरा मजाक उड़ा रहे हैं. Now, advantages of correlational studies. Many hypotheses that cannot be tested experimentally can be studied through correlational studies. Like smoking may cause cancer. अब ये देखने के लिए कि आप किसी को स्मोकिंग कराएंगे, किसको कैंसर होता है या नहीं, ये एक्सपेरिमेंट नहीं कर सकते आप इस पर. Many hypotheses that cannot be tested experimentally can be studied correlationally. For example, smoking may cause cancer. So here you need data from cancer wards and correlate them with smoking history. Second advantage is quickly and easily a large volume of data can be generated through questionnaire. Quickly and easily a large volume of data can be generated through questionnaire. Third advantage, when variables by no means are associated, when variables by no mean are associated, we can safely arrive at a null hypothesis. When the variables by no means are associated, we can safely arrive at null hypothesis. Okay? So no need to carry out further one-tailed, two-tailed hypothesis or research. सीधा सीधी association है नहीं तो causal effect, causal relation तो हो ही नहीं सकता. If association ही नहीं है तो cause effect तो हो ही नहीं सकता. So you can immediately arrive at a null hypothesis. Number 4, sometimes very commonsensical interpretations are possible in correlational studies. Sometimes very commonsensical interpretations are possible in correlational studies. For example, drinking is negatively correlated with aging. Drinking is negatively correlated with aging. Now, what is the conclusion that you get? That as people grow older, the consumption of alcohol reduces. And this is a foolish guess that you believe that as consumption of alcohol reduces, people get old. तो easy commonsensical interpretation क्या होगा? With growing age, drinking reduces. ये interpretation नहीं होगा that with increasing alcohol, aging reduces. ये नहीं होगा, ठीक है? Sometimes very commonsensical interpretations are possible in correlational studies. You know, so people who sleep with their windows open are more likely to get malaria. You cannot say that people who are more likely to get malaria, they keep their windows open. तो ये commonsensical interpretation आप निकाल सकते हैं. So these are the advantages of correlational studies, right? Now coming to non-experimental method. Now before I discuss non-experimental method, once again I ask you to go through the past questions and see how many questions have been asked from Cauchy experimental methods. देखिए एक बार, एडवांटेज डिसएडवांटेज इसी फॉर्मेट पे क्वेश्चन आता है. या नेहा?
So what would be possibly right in the limitations of correlational studies, if there are any?
That is, they cannot establish cause and effect relation. Which is causing which one cannot be determined. Maybe both are caused by a third factor. These are the limitations. ठीक है, तो एक बार देखिए क्या क्या क्वेश्चंस आए। So non-experimental method. The basic premise of non-experimental method, basic demand of non-experimental method is non-intrusion. अच्छा, क्वेश्चंस देखा आपने, आइडेंटिफाई किया, नहीं देखा था? टिक करके रखो, टिक करके रखो, सारे क्वेश्चंस बन जाएंगे आपसे, सारे बन जाएंगे, आई एम श्योर ऑफ दैट। और जैसा कि मैंने कहा, इसमें छुट के नंबर आता है, छुट के नंबर जिसको छक के नंबर बोलते हैं, वो काट ही नहीं सकता अगर तुमने सारे पॉइंट्स लिख दिए। मैंने अपना एक्सपीरियंस बताया था ना एमएससी अप्लाइड साइकोलॉजी का। मैंने एमएससी अप्लाइड साइकोलॉजी 12 साल साइकोलॉजी पढ़ाने के बाद किया। यानी कि जब मैं क्लास करने जाता था तो वो जो प्रोफेसर था उससे मैं ज्यादा जानता था, क्योंकि वो तो एक टॉपिक पढ़ाने आता था, मैं तो पूरा कोर्स पढ़ाता था, वो भी यूपीएससी लेवल। ठीक है, लेकिन मैंने कभी अपने ज्ञान का प्रदर्शन क्लास में नहीं किया। आई वॉज द मोस्ट हम्बल चाइल्ड, मतलब क्वेश्चन पूछते थे तो मैं चुपचाप बैठा रहता था, सब बच्चे कोशिश करते थे, मैं बताता नहीं था, ताकि मैं आइडेंटिफाई ना हो जाऊं। अगर आइडेंटिफाई कर लेते तो प्रैक्टिकल में मुझे चारों खाने चिट कर देते। ठीक है, प्रैक्टिकल में जो वाइवा हुआ उसमें जो इन्विजिलेटर आए थे वो समझ गया कि मामला गड़बड़ है, ये स्टूडेंट नहीं है। ठीक है, तो उसने मुझे पूरा वाइवा होने के बाद आखिर में बोला कि तुम रुकना, बिफोर यू लीव यू जस्ट मीट मी। मुझसे पूछा आप कौन है, तो मैंने बता दिया कि सर मैं ऐसा ऐसा हूं। बोला हो ओके ओके। तो आई वाज सेफ कि उन्होंने नंबर तो दे दिया था भाई जो देना था। अब मैं आपको बताता हूं रिटन एग्जाम, जनरल साइकोलॉजी का पेपर, जो कि मतलब मेरे क्लास में किसी भी स्टूडेंट को अगर मैं जनरल साइकोलॉजी का पीजी का पेपर दूं तो वो हंसते हंसते मतलब फोन पे बात करते करते लिख देगा, ऐसा पेपर होता है। जनरल साइकोलॉजी मतलब ये सारे टॉपिक्स, ये सारे नहीं, मतलब मोटिवेशन, इमोशन, एटीट्यूड, पर्सनालिटी। जनरल साइकोलॉजी का पेपर में मैंने इतना सुंदर पेपर लिखा, आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग कि मुझे डिस्टिंक्शन मार्क्स आए। 100 में 56 नंबर दिए, 56 आउट ऑफ 600। ठीक है। और रिसर्च मेथड का पेपर में मैंने ऐसे ही लिख दिया था बेमन से। मुझे लगा था कि जनरल साइकोलॉजी में मैंने इतना अच्छा नंबर में ले आऊंगा, रिसर्च मेथड में क्या छोटा छोटा लिख कर चलो। मुझे 92 मार्क्स है 100 में। सो देर इज अ टेंडेंसी इन द एग्जामिनर्स ऑफ यूपीएससी साइकोलॉजी, मतलब वही एग्जामिनर होंगे यूपीएससी में भी, यूनिवर्सिटी वाले, उनमें टेंडेंसी है दैट दे आर समवेयर inclined towards generous marking when it comes to research method, क्योंकि रिसर्च मेथड के टीचर्स भी कॉलेजेस में कम मिलते हैं। तो इसीलिए मैं कहता हूं आप कितना भी भाग लो जनरल साइकोलॉजी में, एक लिमिट के बाद आपको मार्क्स नहीं देंगे, लेकिन इसमें नंबर कट ही नहीं सकता है। मुझे समझ में नहीं आया कि 92 क्या सोच के दिया, आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग 50 एंड मुझे 92 उसमें मिल गया। सोशल साइकोलॉजी में 67। लाइफ स्पैन डेवलपमेंट एक और पेपर था, उसमें अराउंड वही 50 to 60 के बीच में कुछ था, बट जनरल साइकोलॉजी वाज रियली शॉकिंग, 56। ठीक है। Which one? ए भाई थोड़ा जोर ऊंचा बोल। वही है टाइम सीरीज का मतलब, बिफोर द इवेंट एंड आफ्टर द इवेंट। ठीक है। सो इन कॉशी एक्सपेरिमेंटल मेथड यू आर कंपेयरिंग टू ग्रुप्स। ठीक है, वन which has suffered divorce, one which has not suffered divorce. So you are not willing to wait. In experimental method, you have to wait until people get divorced. So time series method, you condense the time. You don't have to wait until the event occurs. You already have the event naturally occurring. You save your time, for experimentation. That is the intent of the question. Okay, non-experimental method. Let us see. They are based upon the principle of non-intrusion. Non-intrusion means that the observer should not interfere in any manner. The observer should not interfere in any manner while making observations. The observer should not interfere in any manner while making observations. ठीक है। नॉन इंट्रूजन मतलब किसी भी तरीके से ऑब्जर्व को पता नहीं चलना चाहिए, सब्जेक्ट को पता नहीं चलना चाहिए कि वो रिसर्च के पात्र है। नाउ द मेथड्स इंक्लूडेड आर एज फॉलोज. The types of non-experimental methods are as follows, which I will discuss obviously tomorrow. Case study. सिगमंड फ्रॉइड ने इजाद किया था इस मेथड का, केस स्टडी। आज ये मेथड अलग अलग फील्ड में यूज हो रहा है, इंक्लूडिंग योर एथिक्स पेपर। ठीक है, केस स्टडी। सेकेंड, नेचुरलिस्टिक ऑब्जर्वेशन। Naturalistic observation. Third is survey. And fourth, interview. So the four naturalistic observations, four non-experimental methods are case study, naturalistic observation, सर्वे इंटरव्यू. इन सब से अलग अलग क्वेश्चन बनेंगे. ठीक है. So tomorrow we will look at this. What are they?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in national experiment, like we discussed about no-till, unitil, and mod-till, right?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Sir, in national experiment, we talked about no-till and unitil cities.
That no-till, unitil, yeah.
Sir, if the cities are disguised, like, will the research be accepted?
Sorry?
If the cities are disguised, like, will the research be accepted?
No, the cities are not disclosed. Only disguised names are given.
No, like, if they are not disclosed, like, will the research be accepted by the APA and all?
Your question is, do we have any way to know which cities are being referred to?
No, sir, I'm asking, like, if they are not disclosed, will the researchers, like, the research will be approved by higher authorities or not?
No, the authorities know. The American Psychological Association, which is given the research report, they are aware, but common man will never know.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Fine. हाँ, क्या बोल रहे थे? Naturalist participant. ये इसमें आएगा naturalistic observation. ठीक है. The season has now come that you should consume coconut water on daily basis. नारियल पानी पिया करो. ये समय बॉडी में बहुत डिहाइड्रेशन होता है.